Hello. Welcome to another episode of This is FTC. On today's episode, we have Vivek Sethia, founder and CEO of India on Track, one of India's biggest sports marketing companies, and someone who's been pushing the scene forward for a very long time now. So, without any further ado, Vivek Sethia.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste.
Namaste.
So, Vivek, just tell us a little bit more about you before we get into, what India on Track does and what you do. But give us like a brief background of how you got where you are today.
Sure. So I was just like most kids, I was into sport when I was growing up, but I was lucky to play a couple of sport at a serious level. So I was skating. I was a national champion for 5 years. I was also into basketball. I was playing state level. I was playing school level cricket. I was playing a little bit of football.
What position did you play in basketball?
In basketball, point guard, man. My height. What else can you do? But it's funny that how basketball has evolved so much. Like the positions that used to exist 20 years ago, they just. I mean, there's no power forward anymore. Anyway. So I was just playing, and when 12th kind of finished, then that was it. Really, I mean, the sport took a dive, and studies were kind of more important. So, but I always thought that I'll do something in sport. Eventually. But it was really like eventually. Meaning like I always thought that I'll maybe retire early and maybe do something more on the CSR side, supporting sports, or do some charitable work around sport when I have the money. Then I over the years, became a corporate slave. Got into consulting, was working in New York. And actually, I met an accident, which was a fortunate accident. I was hiking and I damaged my knee. Took a little bit of a fall in a night hike, and that put me in a disability for a few months. So that gave me a lot of time to think what I wanted to do. I was almost 30 at the time, and I was thankfully debt free. I had paid off my loans from my business school in the US, and I had no commitments. I didn't have to move a family or anything. So I just decided that if I don't do this now, then who will do it? Like we always growing up used to think India की sports की हालत बुरी है.
कोई कुछ करता नहीं है.
Every 4 years during Olympics, I would literally cry that like you would maybe get a medal or maybe not even that when I was younger. And I thought, I'm from a privileged family. I mean, we weren't very rich, but at least I knew that my parents would support me if I don't have a job. I was debt free. I had the will. I didn't have any other obligations really. Like, why not? Right. So I decided to first take a sabbatical from my consulting work. Came to India for 6 months to evaluate the scene. Nobody really needed my skills, to be honest. And I'm talking about 10 years back when only one IPL had happened.
I don't think they knew what they needed.
But I don't think the industry really needed any skills apart from some ops level work or some sponsorship level work. And ops is a very experiential work. Like it comes with a lot of like just on the job training.
Right.
And sponsorship comes with a lot of connections with marketing people and properties. And for somebody who hadn't been in India for a while and had no ops experience, I couldn't really add any value to either of the two. So even though in the 6 months I wasn't really able to get a breakthrough in sports, but somehow I just decided to quit and stick around. And then I got lucky with the job. I was persistent with a bunch of people to a point where some of the receptionists would really recognize my voice when I would call potential employers. I was lucky because one of the organizations needed more of a finance kind of a job for.
And that's something you had experienced.
For a particular project, and even though that project didn't work out, but I got an entry into the sports industry, and then I worked for a couple of years, and in 2013 I started my own thing, which was more around the development side of sport.
So yeah, we'll get to that. So until 2012, you were not in any way connected to what you're doing right now.
Until 2010.
2010.
And then two and a half years of being in a job in sports, and then 2013 is when I started India on Track.
Right, but so till 2010, absolutely no relation with the industry.
30 years of my life, yes.
And then one day you just like
Yeah.
said, thank you very much, and
Yes.
I'm back. So you started in 2013, 2014,
The company
20,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why the name India on Track?
India on track, man. Like India on track. We're just trying to put India on track
In every way.
in every way. I mean, the oxymoron is that we actually don't do any track work. We only work in football,
Yeah.
basketball, and so on. Um, but I think like one of my friends just I remember back in the day I used to be active on Facebook, and I put a post saying any ideas on a company name, and one of my friends who knows me really well, she put India on track, and it just somehow stuck with me. And that was 4 or 5 years before I actually started the company.
Acha,
Um,
like
Yeah,
2009, 10,
yeah. When I was about to leave, like the US, I initially thought I'll set up something on my own
immediately.
immediately. Yeah, and yeah, and then the name stuck with me, and I just feel it just resonates a lot with what I stand for.
And also what the company does.
Yeah, what the company
in a-
does. Yeah,
in a big way.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, what in like you've been doing it for 6, 7 years now, 10 years maybe,
Yeah.
if you count your job
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
How has the landscape evolved in terms of, where the industry was when you started in the industry and where it is today? How has the landscape evolved in that sense?
So the funny thing is that even though a lot of people feel that sports industry has evolved, and it has in many ways, but in many ways it hasn't,
Okay.
which is like very sad. So where it has evolved is, of course, we have more sporting properties, we have more leagues, we have more entities, we have more tournaments, we are bidding for international tournaments, whether it's the Under 17 World Cup, Commonwealth Games, now the Women's Under 17 World Cup, and so on. We've bid for Asia
AFC,
Cup.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's definitely more action, so to speak. But 10 years of more action and a lot more commercial transactions, still we don't have proper professionals. Actually, the level of people I used to deal with in 2010 and the level of people I deal with in 2020 is more or less the same. And the brightest minds of our country don't want to work in the sports industry. And we just don't have good administrators, and we don't have people who can really are visionary in the organization that can are visionary in the industry that can take the industry forward. A lot of money is spent. But I mean, I don't really know if it's spent in the right way. And I think we really need to work on invest in intellectual capital for the industry to grow forward. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same. I don't see it improving anytime soon either.
So, in terms of where we're at today, you were saying the industry is like it's increasing in terms of commercial transactions, but it's not increasing in terms of
Intellectual
quality
capital.
development. It's not. There's no way it's going up.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the people who are, there are of course more jobs, right? So because there are more organizations and there are more leagues and events and tournaments and so on. So there are more people, but the quality of people is still poor.
Understood.
And unless we have like proper MBAs coming into the industry, or people from with good experiences, cross industry experiences, I think that's where we fault the most as recruiters, is that we always say इस आदमी का कोई sports में job experience नहीं है, right? And we start treating people as like freshers because they just have no experience in the sports industry.
Right.
But what we just fail to understand is like things about transferable skills. I mean, if you're a good salesman, if you can sell this shoe, you can find a way to sell a training product to a parent,
school,
or whatever, right? So I think that's where we falter the most. And most organizations in the sports sector are looking at sports experience. And किसी को बचपन से थोड़ी आ जाएगा sports experience. Like somebody has to get into the industry to be able to get sports experience. And that's why some of the outsiders, so to speak, are doing well, because they also bring in a lot of other expertise. Right. So, for example, in India on Track, one of the things we do well is consult to international organizations on how to expand their footprint in India.
Yeah.
and actually a lot of it
And you
has
say
to-
that in a very humble way. But
no, seriously,
You
but-
work with like NBA and
yeah, but
La Liga.
yeah, but a lot of it comes because a bunch of us have consulting backgrounds doing non-sports consulting work in the past, right? Otherwise, why would a big organization like La Liga or Premier League or a Man City or Dortmund or
Whoever.
what have you, right?
Right.
Would want to pick a company like us, which is a small organization. There's so many big gorillas like IMG
Right.
and JSWs and all of those, right? And don't get me wrong, they do amazing work, and we all have a kind of a space for
Right.
us. But I think we have to start thinking of skills more than just sports experience. And for operations, of course, sports experience is important because how do you run a sports event?
But that
without-
also happens
yeah.
with time, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't, as you said, you weren't born
Yeah.
with that sport
Yeah, yeah.
experience. You
Absolutely.
just kind of grow into it, and
Absolutely.
and everyone who starts in the industry, any industry for that matter, is
Yeah.
coming from
Bilkul.
a fresh start. The only difference I think is that in the sports industry, there's like formal training for the sports industry is very little in India still.
Yeah.
Or even if it's there, it's not really like job compatible. It's more book based.
Yeah,
Correct
so
me
that's
if I'm wrong.
absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why we significantly invested in an institute in Mumbai is to focus on experiential kind of learning for students, and that's where we falter. Like our sports management institutes are not equipped to handle the kind of the demand of for the kinds of jobs that we need.
Right.
And I mean, we are also by no means there, but we are making an attempt to try to see
Get
what
better.
Yeah, for sure.
So you do a lot of things across the industry. Like, matlab, you have a hand in education, in training, in sponsorship, then also like events.
Yeah.
When you started, did you think it was going to be all of these things, or did you have a very idealistic approach in mind कि मैं तो यही करूँगा?
No, so a lot of these things have evolved because of just having to survive, like honestly. This wasn't a plan that we'll do all this. And also on the flip side, the fact that we were so flexible and nimble and structured the way we are,
Said
it
yes
allowed
before
us-
we knew how to do
it
it.
allowed us to do all this. So काम आ रहा है अगर और पैसे कमाने हैं to survive, right? And one thing I've like spoken everywhere I speak is the need that our country has to have sustainable organizations in sports. And to your previous question on what has improved, this is the one thing which has not improved at all. Still, most sports organizations are either CSR funded or charitable organizations. And unless we have sustainable businesses, it will not work.
Right.
So we did all of this because we just wanted a company which can survive,
Right.
right? And we started with training, and training standalone was just not able. We were not able to crack the code. So कुछ consulting opportunity आई वो कर ली, कोई छोटा मोटा event आया वो कर लिया. But thankfully it evolved into now proper verticals.
Long term,
Yeah.
like like digital and
Absolutely. But it was a need of the hour. Like we would have not survived if we hadn't like tried different things.
that. I
Yeah.
mean, that makes a lot of sense because you can't base an entire organization just on someone's goodwill.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you talk about CSR,
Yeah, exactly.
so your fate is tied to that other company earning enough profits
Exactly.
in that year. If they don't, then you have a big hole without any way to fill it, or
Yeah,
without
I mean, there's so many examples. Like if you're into the football scene, there used to be this club called JCT, run by a very, very, very dear friend of mine. The club, there was no revenue model for I League. There unfortunately still isn't. And the club was competing in I League, and it was just purely from the will of the heart of the promoters that they loved football so much, they loved Punjab so much, they loved developing the talent in Punjab, that they were running the club taking a loss every single year.
right.
And when the economy turned and when their core business was suffering, it's impossible to continue to take such hits,
Right.
in just passion projects, and only if we had a more sustainable approach towards an I League or our
Sponsorship
structures
or-
or
yeah.
whatever it might be, it would have been easier for clubs to sustain and survive, right? I mean, even now, I mean, if you look at most of the franchises except the IPL franchises, it's a hit. right?
Every year. Yeah.
Every year.
So far.
So far.
They haven't been able to turn the coin yet.
Yeah, even in leagues like Kabaddi, which are supposed to be cash-rich leagues and there's good TRP and so on, it's difficult for franchises to create value.
So are the leagues
long-term.
making money and the teams aren't, or no one is making money?
So, if you say making money, that's a different question. If you say creating value, I would say that's a different question. So, if you look at the Kabaddi League, they're definitely creating long-term value as at the league level, right? The brand exists. A lot of people know about Kabaddi. There's good viewership. They've been able to crack one or two really solid sponsorships, long-term partnerships, and there's tremendous amount of value creation. Now, if I'm Star, the owner of that league, I would look at the league not from the perspective of whether I made money or not that particular year, but what can that create for me in 10 years, right? But that's where the challenge with franchisees is. In a league like Kabaddi, where franchises are actually not getting enough individuality, right? It's a circus model. You go from one city to another, right? So the Delhi team is not building connect with Delhi because of the way the model is, right? That's the question the franchisees need to ask. That fine, if we are losing money, we're losing money, but can we actually build long-term value and right?
Because at the end of the day, a club can only function if it has enough supporters and fans to build along and sell other services. Along
so right now they're all reliant on how big the central deals can be and how much money can flow back from those deals.
So there's no
which is also great, like in the sense that the Vivo deal was a big deal, and a lot of money started flowing back into the franchise. That's great. But eventually, if that franchise is not able to create a brand for themselves or value for themselves, what is it really worth?
Because then there's no long-term play. It's like an operational model, and you don't invest so much of your time and money into just earning like 5, 10, 15% here and there.
I've sat in conversations where, and listen, ISL and Kabaddi are strong leagues, and they will continue to be strong. The badminton league does well, and they have the right promoters. But I've sat in meetings where potential league owners will say, let's just have a franchise lose just enough money that is enough for them to be okay losing. That's the business model. You're a wealthy guy. Let's say tu 2 crore lose kar dega saal ke and you will not flinch. So I'll have a model where you lose 2 crores every year.
But that's it.
But that's it. So that it doesn't pinch you.
But at some point it will, like long term.
It could or it could not, depending on the personal PR you're getting or the value you're getting, and so on. Yeah.
Vivek, how did we meet? Do you remember? I've been trying to think about this.
Yeah, I think I remember. Yeah, there was. I think somebody reached out to us saying you want to do something in IPL with Admiral. Back in the day.
No, but this is before. I think we met before we
Admiral.
even started.
No. So you guys were deciding to get Admiral at the time, and one of your kind of launch plans was to get it through an IPL franchise, a partnership or something, and you were just exploring at the moment what the cricket scene was. I guess that's how. Some designer girl who was, I don't remember the name, but
we had had a PR person. I remember now. And you came to our Noida office. No?
Yeah.
This was like 5, 6 years ago. 2014, 15?
Yeah, I mean, which 1 year before, I guess, Admiral started.
Yeah, so we started in 2015, October.
Yeah, so this would be mid 2014, I guess. Yeah. Long time, huh?
6, 7 years now. And from there, it just like, we've just gone through so many different, working
also.
relationships and phases and
actually the good, bad, and the ugly, right?
Yeah, seen all the weird phases that go along with working together.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're pretty much like, and you're being humble, but India on Track is definitely one of the biggest companies when it comes to sports marketing or any of that in the country at least, right? Like sponsorship, you do digital, you do. Events
not so much sponsorship, but yeah, definitely digital. So I would say 2 verticals. One is more on the development side, which is training.
Yeah.
And the other is like an agency, like
which is your core model. Like
marketing
training
agency.
is your basic core model, which you want to scale
Yes.
eventually.
Yes.
What is like? Where do you see the inflection point between what the sports industry does, and this is including athletes, teams, so on and so forth, and what the culture, or as we call it, which is lifestyle, fashion, all of that. Like, where do you see those inflection points happening, and where do you see the Indian industry at right now in terms of that?
Yeah. So I feel, so a lot of people say India doesn't have sports culture, right? And I completely disagree. Okay. India doesn't have professional sport culture. Like, which household doesn't have kids who don't play, right? We have a ridiculously strong culture when it comes to recreational sport,
Right.
right? Lots of parents want to put their kids in hobby classes, right? Now, of course, those options are expanding dramatically. But back in the day, those options were mainly around sport, maybe a little bit around art or music or, now, of course, there's language and art and other hobbies and so on. But I feel in the last 30 to 40 years, when some level of disposable income has increased in our country after we stabilized ourselves post-independence, post the 70s or so, I think lots of kids have just gone out and played, right?
We did as kids,
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I think I have like 15 years over you, and you did, and I did, and my elders did. So there was a good period of 30 years where kids would just go out and play, right? And that was such an integral part of our culture, and I believe it still is. Now, of course, the physical play is transforming into e-sport, right, or gaming. So this whole thing of sport being alien to our country is actually more around professional sport being alien to our country, not like day-to-day stuff, right? And I feel that's what the culture is really. I mean, forget fashion for a second. Like, what is your date? What is lifestyle?
Right.
What is lifestyle? Your lifestyle is what you wear in the evening. It doesn't need to. It doesn't necessarily need to be fashionable. It could be comfortable.
Utilitarian,
It could be utility. It could be what you enjoy, what you're comfortable in, what kind of fits into what your activity is, right? And that's where I think there's a great integration, right? What is your choice of clothing when you're going out? So going out to play. I remember when I was younger, we would play gully cricket, and in a sample size of, let's say, 20 players, 20 young players, we would have all different kinds of culture, right?
Right.
So there were people who were like my brother, who would be very conscious about like going when they're stepping out of the house to be well dressed, right? Even if they're going out to play cricket in the gully, right? There are people like me who were completely in the opposite spectrum.
Who
Like,
just don't care.
I would be wearing whatever, and I'd be wiping my sweat from my t-shirt and all of that. And there's everything in the middle, right? There would be some guys who would be like sneakerheads. They wouldn't care about what they wear, but their shoes were sexy. So all kinds of things. And of course, that's evolved and it's different now. But it's still a lot around what we go out and do, right? What our average day-to-day lives are. To me, culture is not about when we are going out and dressing for an occasion.
It's just
culture is about what we embrace on our
day,
day-to-day, right? And to me, sport is also that, right? And that's where we focus on the grassroots side of sport. I mean, I genuinely believe you create a big enough database for anything, right? Talent, you create a big enough grassroots movement, talent will be incidental, right? For sure.
You'll find it.
You'll find it. There is no way that you'll not find it. And this is not for sport, this is for everything. We have the best engineers in the country, but what we don't realize is that look at the volume of engineers we are producing.
The number of engineers.
Right? Or if we have doctors, or if we have IT.
Whatever we've gotten good at is also a case of sheer volume.
Absolutely. Right? And if we have enough people just playing, right? Then that's it. And to me, that's how fashion will evolve. To me, fashion is actually the talent side, right? And culture is the grassroots side. So when you have like just things around the culture, like people embracing what they're wearing and what they're comfortable in, and not worrying about being judged or what is good or what is defined as good, then trends will evolve off of that, right? And you just embrace what you enjoy, what you like, what you wear, and and that evolves as well, right?
Right.
I mean, you made me a sneakerhead. I never thought I'd be. I think in the last fucking 3-4 months, I've spent. I don't want to say it, but a lot of money buying sneakers.
Let's hear it. Let's
right?
hear it. That's a
Now,
ballpark.
If I
Give like a
if you,
wide range.
If you involve the gifts I've forced people to give me, the bills will run into lakhs. So, not lakhs, but definitely over a lakh.
Yeah.
But that's because they are kind people who've gifted me shit. I wouldn't have been able to afford it. But the fact is that it evolves as well, right? But it needs to be around what you're comfortable with, and
You enjoy it. And I
you
think
enjoy it. And I think the challenge also there is for people to be able to find their individuality, because there's a lot of pressure for others to say, "Arey ye bekar hai, ye acha nahi hai, ye this is what-"
conformity.
Yeah, right.
Matlab, more in terms of like herd mentality and
Herd mentality, or even just the whole concept of being acknowledged,
validation.
Validation, right? So somebody else says, "Haan, ye acha lag raha hai," then you just start feeling that this is good, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of it is around comfort, utility, what you are, what's something that you feel like that's a part of your kind of style or fabric or whatever.
Right.
And I think fashion then evolves off of that, in my opinion. That's how culture is. Of course, there's fashion and there's all of that, and I respect it. And I don't know anything about it, but I respect it. But yeah, to me, that's how it evolves. And for me, that's the way I see how I wear my clothes. And this is the fanciest I'll ever be. So I was coming here, so I thought I'll pick up my fanciest clothes so that I get validation.
No, I remember, except the first meeting when you pitched.
Yeah.
Every time else used to be chappals.
Yeah, I love chappals, and I still love chappals. But yeah, sneakers are changing. Now the thing with sneakers is now I'm buying all this stuff, right? And
So now you have to wear it.
I'm not the kind of sneakerhead who would just save. And there are many like those, right? They're like, I have this shoe. I don't want to resell it, but I haven't worn it in 4 years. Like, dude, what the fuck? Right? So I'm not that guy, so I want to wear it. So that's why my chappals consumption has reduced. But even in winter, like, I'd be all chappals.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Except
For the longest time.
when it was too cold.
Yeah, whether it was too cold or sometimes when I have to
pitch
or I have to conform to the norms of social in a formal meeting or something. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, how do and this is, I'm going to ask you specific to the sports industry, how do athletes and brands collaborate in today's day and age? And what actually goes into the behind the scenes of that happening?
There's no collaboration. If you ask me.
At all?
At all. So collaboration, see, there is a difference between sponsorship and partnership.
100%.
And that's where we are right now. We are selling sponsorships. We are not creating partnerships.
We're not forging long-term brands or associations.
Absolutely. I mean, again, don't get me wrong, there are exceptions. But there are brands that would sponsor a sporting event purely, and this is I would say 90% of the brands, purely as a media buy, right? And that's how they evaluate also. So if you have USC written here, right, you're playing IPL, somebody buys this lot and they say, okay, I'm going to evaluate my media value that I got from sponsoring Mumbai Indians, for example, right? What is the media value of my logo being placed here?
Right.
And then you compare that media value with regular advertising.
Yeah.
So what if I had just advertised during IPL, for example? I would have, in order to get this much visibility, I would have paid X. But I got the same amount of visibility by being on the shirt, by paying less than X. So this is a good deal, right? Or in the same amount of money, I get more visibility. And where we lack is the whole concept of partnership, right? And this, in the sporting industry, this expands to clothing and partnerships around that as well, right? That any kind of kitting relationships mostly are around just more media and
sponsorship,
right? Yeah. Now, of course, Puma is doing some interesting work with Virat, and I don't personally like the products, but at least there's an attempt to create.
And they have, there is a certain amount of audience that they've been able to capture, which is
So that's that. HRX, the Hrithik brand, the Myntra kind of collaboration, so to speak. Even though I feel like the way they market it is not what I would have done personally, but at least they've been able to create a brand, or more than a brand, they've been able to create a business, right?
Somewhat
Right,
sustainable.
they're making
model,
money,
yeah.
they're growing, and it works for a particular set of audience, and that's good. But a lot of the partnerships have been just like sponsorships. I mean, you look at what um, the Indian cricket team jerseys have been in the past. Like, I'm a huge fan. I was watching the test match right before this. I woke up at 4:54 this morning to watch the last day, and but I've actually never spent 1 rupee buying an Indian team cricket team merchandise ever, and I have attended so many World Cups. I've spent so much money in traveling, watching cricket. I've spent money on tickets and flights and hotels and matches, and I've worked in the industry. But there's nothing, if there was more kind of a collaboration to try to meet the demands of a genuine fan who can spend, I would have loved to purchase a jersey. I'm not even saying a jersey, like something. Right?
Something around it, yeah.
And I'm the kind of guy who, like, I travel for football and I always buy souvenirs. Like, those are my memories. I might not buy merchandise
Yeah, I
or
remember
like a jersey,
Pins.
but I could buy whatever. So back in the day, I used to buy T-shirts, and then it became really difficult for me to like keep them and then be able to make use of them. But yeah, so like even a property like that where so much commercial value is and so much money would have been spent by the merchandise partner to get those rights and to activate those rights, and there's just been like nothing. And it's been the case with football as well. I actually I've felt this several times that the Indian jersey that now that you guys have is something that I would like to buy. I would have liked to buy. And I feel really terrible that I asked for a free jersey from you. Because it's not a matter of a few hundred rupees or 1,000, 1,200, whatever it is. It's just that I should have shown to myself that's my way of supporting the sport. Right? Because I genuinely feel that that's what it is. So if I can buy Barcelona's jersey, why not the Indian jersey? Now, of course, the kitting partner and the brand has to give me enough reasons for me to buy. But if I do like it, I should buy it, right? And that's what I've decided, that the next one, which I'm sure you're launching soon, I'm going to not ask you for it, even though you'll be more than happy to give it to me. But I'm going to buy it, yeah. And I've felt many times, like almost every time I wear it, I feel a little terrible inside that, like, if I can't support Indian football myself, it's just stupid. Like,
yeah, I get where you're coming from. I get what you're trying to say. So you're saying in today's industry, collaboration is minimal, and we're only looking at sponsorship deals mostly across the board.
See, I don't necessarily blame anyone in the process, because what happens is that the rights holders have so much financial pressure. Look at an ISL team, right? Now there's so much financial pressure to just sustain a club, right? Because they're
loss making.
They're under so much pressure. Now, if they have somebody like, let's say you guys come and say, like, listen, we'll make this amazing range and this and that and fanware, and we'll do collaboration, we'll design, blah, 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 whatever. But because you have to invest so much in this, we can't really pay you, right? But there's somebody else who says, listen, fuck all of this. I'm going to just give you a plain ass jersey, but I'll pay you 10 lakhs on whatever, X amount of money on top of it, right? If I'm the CEO of the club, it's not an obvious choice, unfortunately, to go with the design and the fanware and all of that. There's pressure, right? There's pressure for generating cash, and any amount of cash is good cash. So I don't blame anyone really. It's just how the market is right now.
Right.
But especially the teams which are profitable, I feel like there is onus for them to don't think of
they have
fans
like
as
the
dummies.
Responsibility, if not the obligation,
exactly.
to actually push the boundary forward.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're lacking.
Like, I'm a fan of Delhi Daredevils and now Delhi Capital. I'm a fan. Like, I felt sad when they lost the finals. Like, I felt sad genuinely, right? I'm a bigger fan of other franchises of other sports, but definitely I'm a fan. But never have they inspired me to spend 1 rupee on their merchandise.
Right.
Just because I'm a stupid ass collector. One time I bought a magnet, a fridge magnet, just because I needed 50 rupees I spent. And that was Daredevils at the time. Just because I needed to have something, right?
Something to.
But they didn't really inspire. I could have spent a lot more than that. But they've never inspired me to buy anything, unfortunately.
Makes sense.
And I know that the new regime, new management is doing better with regards to fan development. It'll take a few years for them to also
Kind of evolve to that level.
to that. But till now.
And also because Delhi before this wasn't really even a team that was in contention across the board.
I mean, for many years it was.
Till about the first 6, 7, 8 years, it was not even a team that was in contention.
First 2, 3 years, we were killing it, man. What are you talking about?
I mean,
for second year IPL, hang on, we didn't lose a match in the entire group stages.
I was too young, so I hate short format
Sehwag,
cricket. I hate
Gambhir,
short format cricket.
AB de Villiers,
I don't watch it.
Dilshan, we had the
No,
squad,
I agree.
man.
But after that, from year 3 onwards till about year 8, year 9, Delhi was not
good.
it was just written off right from the beginning. We used to lose the first match and then just keep losing.
Yeah, but even in those years, people like myself that spent money watching games. Even though we were lucky to find some tickets here or there free of cost, but still I've spent money buying tickets and I've watched the games and so there's actually genuine lack of partnerships, and you can't really blame anyone because the industry.
But
is
now
so
you
different.
can, right? Now, when the club's actually making money every year, they're still covering maybe accumulated losses, maybe.
Yeah.
But they're still making money every year at this point.
Yeah.
So now would you not say that it's almost like a responsibility to push that boundary forward?
Yeah.
Or to forge partnerships because at the end of the day, a club or any such property is about long-term value. Manchester United is valued at what? 5 billion, 4 billion, something like that. But that's because they have such a large connect with the people that are across the world that follow, will wake up at crazy hours just to watch a game, stay awake till night, wake up early morning. And you go and see comments, right? There's people from Philippines, from somewhere in Africa, from India, from the UK. The UK is the smallest, potential market for them. Everywhere else is where they have more. And this is only because of course, there's a legacy behind it. But they've built that over the last 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah. The thing is that you have to, all of this can only work when you have fans who will support you even when you're really bad, right? So Arsenal these days, for example.
Right.
But the challenge
who
is...
are you taking a shot at right now?
All Arsenal fans. All Arsenal fans. Fuck you.
What team do you support?
Arsenal.
Fuck you.
I mean, in Premier League, I'm very indifferent. But if I have to pick one team, it's Arsenal. But my heart doesn't cry if they lose that much.
Not anymore.
But if I have to pick one to win, I would prefer them to win. Anyway, but the point is that you have to understand the pressures that a CEO has versus long-term club commitment. So what I mean by this is, you'll be in your job for a couple of years, right? It's the reality of how the world works. So this is what Wall Street pressure is also, right? If you're a CEO of a financial institution, you are being judged every quarter, right? You're judged every quarter. Now, can you think about 5 years down the line? It's very difficult to think about 5 years down the line when you know that every quarter you can lose your job, right? Now, the onus is on the board, really, right? And we don't have that structure right now in our franchises.
It's like promoters saying...
Now, if I am the CEO and I know that if I do this fan development exercise, it will be great for our club 8 years down the line, right? It will be phenomenal for our club 15 years down the line. It will change the face of our organization 20 years down the line.
Right.
But I'm getting fired in 2 years if I don't turn a healthy P&L.
Right.
Right? Now, okay, the question is, am I going to spend 2 crores every year on fan development when my biggest thing I'm judged on
is
my P&L, and B, the fact that the number one most critical thing about fan development is performance on the pitch. It's a proven fact. Right. It's only when you get to that United level or Arsenal level now, after 50 years of that, you still have fans who will say, "Theek hai, we are relegation. We are close to relegation, but we still
But we're
support.
still here, yeah.
But
if they get relegated, then
yeah,
then what happens?
dude, I have this crazy story of Atletico Madrid getting relegated. I think it was 2012. 12. They got relegated for a year. That year, they sold more jerseys and more season tickets than any year in their history.
Damn.
That's the fans. That's like crazy fans of Atletico. Like and
That's like real support. That's
the
when
real
you know
support.
you
Like
can't.
you just want the team to bounce back. From that. So even though you would argue that the clubs which are making money have the obligation now, or not the obligation, but at least some sort of a responsibility to do more of it, and I agree. But I think the reality also is that there need to be more visionary people at the board level. And I think, like for example, Bangalore does a great job with it, in my opinion.
RCB or Bengaluru?
RCB, even Bengaluru, but RCB I was talking about, like they just started, I think just last month they opened their first like RCB bar, so to speak. They've really connected well with the fabric of Bangalore. Even though their performance is not always top notch, but they have the fans, and so there are many factors around it. Of course, Virat has played a big role. AB de Villiers has played a big role in that, and in general, they play in a certain way. All of that, but even the management has done a lot with regards to, despite the fact that they had turbulence times with their ownership getting changed and all of that. But in my opinion, they've done a great job. I think Chennai, CSK has done a great job with the local market,
building their
so
fan
to
base.
speak.
Yeah.
As a fan of Delhi and as somebody who embraces the city as well, like I feel a little disappointed. Like, and I know the new management is doing a lot more now. Hopefully, in the next couple of years, we'll see some amazing things. But yeah, that's where we are at, and it'll take much more time than we think it.
How do you compare it to the Western system? And by Western, I don't mean anything but the USA. Where is the USA at in terms of this engagement, so to speak, and where are we at? And what can we learn from that? Is my question.
See, it's difficult to even take that as an example. I mean, if you look at the GDP, I mean, per capita.
Basically, disposable income is of course a lot higher.
Is just so much higher for them to be able to. I mean, look at the TV deals. You look at the sponsorship deals. It's just crazy. I mean, to a point where NBA jersey didn't have a sponsor till a couple of years ago, and now also it's like a formality.
It's small,
And like they don't need the money. Or if you look at Premier League, they just got rid of their title sponsor because they wanted a clean slate. They didn't need the Barclays money, and Barclays is still a sponsor, but not the title sponsor. So it's tough to kind of even look at those markets and see where we can. I mean, it's tough to even say where we can learn. I think we'll have to carve out our own path, so to speak. And coming back to the very kind of the first discussion we were having of getting intelligent people in the industry, that's where we falter. Is like we have some people who studied something, and we say, "Ye MLS mein ye ho raha hai," or China mein ye ho raha hai. Or India is so unique and so different. Like it's not
language, culture, everything changes. Like
so, for example, IPL has been able to crack the code of people wanting to spend on tickets. Before IPL happened, I don't know anyone who would spend even 100 rupees buying anything. Right? Maybe Team India matches, little bit here or there, but like I was running the commercial side of the 2010 Hockey World Cup. Okay. India was playing Pakistan, opening game of the World Cup. Okay. Hockey, our sport. I had at least 100 people I know who could have spent any amount of money to get that experience anywhere in the world, for example. Ask me for free tickets, unwilling to spend even 100 rupees to buy the ticket.
How much was the ticket?
100, 200 bucks, that's it.
No way.
Right? India playing fucking Pakistan in India in a World Cup opener, being hosted in India in a sport which is like our sport, you know? And people is, But IPL has been able to change that habit. Like people, I know legit people, like people spending 2-3 grand, where
On a
that
ticket,
becomes
yeah.
like their monthly or even
Entertainment expense.
entertainment expense, right? I mean, people who would not normally spend that kind of money. So it needs to be a lot of behavioral change over a period of time. But cricket is interesting. Like the flip side of what you asked is that if I'm running a club and I know that people are going to still spend irrespective of what we do for them because it's cricket and because the nature of how it's evolved, then can I just get away with it? Right? It's a question. I mean, I'm not saying the answer is yes, but it's definitely a question.
But I guess like that's where
Right? When you have just crazy following,
Yeah.
when you have enough numbers,
Yeah.
enough numbers to fill your stadiums or enough to continue to give crazy
for
TRPs.
IPL, the central deal fills that enough number, don't you think though? Like,
Yeah.
matlab,
That's
to
what
a
I'm
certain
saying.
extent.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, would you want to just do more? Like, like ठीक है चलने दो, चल रहा है, लोग देख रहे हैं, जीतेंगे तो वैसे ही fans बन जाएंगे. I rather invest in my team. Now, of course,
There's a cap to that also.
there's a cap to that as well, but there's also like there's a lot of like lots of questions. So I'm saying it's easy to sit from the outside and say कि यार fan development नहीं कर रहे, but there's actually a lot of questions to be asked. Of course, I'm not vouching कि नहीं करना चाहिए, right?
Because at the end of the day, अगर आप club चला रहे हो तो आपका like your main job is long term value creation, and that is only coming from fan base. That is only coming from, of course, good performance consistently. Because like even I'm a United fan, so even in the last 5-6 years, it's been all over the place.
Yeah.
4 different managers, but every game I'll still, if not watch the game because it's at not time, I'll still watch the highlights after it.
Yeah,
Just because there is a certain level of connect that they've been able to build with me.
yeah,
And that, I don't do that for any IPL team. Firstly, because I'm not a fan of short term,
yeah.
like
But
short,
for others,
short format cricket.
But there are fans like that.
I agree. I'm not saying they're not. I'm saying the idea is to build that over a long period of time for which you're actually creating value.
Yeah.
Which is to your first point about like whether they're actually
Yeah.
creating value or they're
Yeah.
not adding any value to it.
Yeah,
And I think the goals need to be aligned, whether it's the promoters and the management. Because as you said, if I have pressure on me कि अगर ये target, if I don't meet this target in the next 2 years, which could be something like instead of me earning 50 crore profit, I earned 60 crores, then I'm out of a job. But that shouldn't like.
but the thing is कि to be fair also, if you see IPL has become so competitive now, right? Like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you could say that the bottom 3 will be these.
And the top 3 will be these, yeah.
And it's still continuing in somewhat in that trend, but it's become so much more competitive because most of the owners have now said, listen, we are turning a profit. I'm okay if I make a lesser profit, but I want my team to be competitive, right? Or I just want to go for a win, right? And I think the next big, क्या बोलते हैं उसको जो the player, when you can just retain
Auction,
3 player
yeah.
auction or whatever that system happens, I think that will change a lot. That will change a lot about IPL because a lot of teams are stuck with their players from pre-new TV deal era, right? But after the new TV deal, a lot of them have money and lots of them are saying, ठीक है, हम भी billionaires हैं, ultimately. I might be a smaller billionaire than you,
Right.
but I'm still a billionaire. And if I'm turning a profit, I might as well take a smaller profit, but I want to compete. Right? I want to be able to win.
Because it's
Right?
pretty much a sport.
Exactly.
in that sense.
At the end of
That's
the day.
yeah, exactly.
Right? And back in the day, the challenge was a lot of the other smaller clubs were saying, listen, I don't want to continue to just bleed money. Right? It's okay if I don't win. And there's a space for that as well. Right? I'm going to build a young team. Right? Or I'm going to build a team with 2 or 3 like senior players and then build something.
Over a longer period of time, yeah.
So different people have different flaws, but now all of them are making money. So like, ठीक है, I'll make a little less, but I want to try to win. And look at what Kings 11 did this year, like had a great run. And Kings 11 traditionally has been a smaller club, right? And I think when the new system happens, I think this year or next year, I think now that they've announced the 2 new teams, it might just happen. They might just wait for it.
So they've announced, I had no idea.
But not for 21 but 22. So they might just wait for the larger
That
thing.
no,
But
yeah.
that will be amazing. Everyone's in the pot now. I mean, apart from 2 or 3 that
Hmm.
3 players or something, and everyone is in the pot, and clubs can really change their teams.
So now you won't be able to retain any.
Yeah, you might retain 2 or 3, but not like the 5 or 6, which are the small auctions that
Understood.
happen.
What is the craziest experience that you've had?
Sporting experience.
No, not just like okay, so two.
Work
One is
experience.
one is the sporting experience, and then the craziest experience that you had, which happened as a result of you being in the industry, and that can be anything. Like your definition of the craziest experience. So one is the craziest sporting moment, which I'm sure you have a few to choose from.
Yeah.
But then this one is just about where your work took you, which you never expected.
Both have a lot, like I have a bunch to choose in both. But like, for example, in the crazy sporting experience, like, dude, I was in Pakistan watching India-Pakistan play cricket. Dude, what the fuck, man? Being able to go to Pakistan, like, and in a city where my parents, my grandparents were from.
How
and
long
to-
back was this?
This was 2003 or 3, I think, 3 or 4, where tensions were high, and we did the India-Pakistan 5-match ODI series, and India went there, and I cashed the last game. Rahul Dravid scored a century. We were fucking celebrating on the streets of Lahore, dancing and with drums in our hands, and it was a crazy experience. But yeah, lots of amazing ones like South Africa football, FIFA World Cup. Um, there was a game between Brazil and Holland, Netherlands, and we didn't have tickets for it. We were in a city which was like 800 kilometers, and the match was in the afternoon. We just bumped into some friends from New York. They had some extra tickets. They gave us the tickets at 2 a.m. We drove 800 kilometers in the morning to catch that game. Like crazy stuff. But on the sports
In Africa,
management
in
South
like
Africa, yeah. But I think on sports management side, like I've been in meetings where I thank the fact that the sports management industry is so fuck all in India. Honestly,
What do you mean?
like I have 10 years experience in the industry. I'm considered an expert, right? I wouldn't be an expert in any other industry. Like if I say this all the time to lots of young students, especially in our institute, is that if you are working in pharmaceutical or
Any
I don't
other
know,
established industry,
telecommunications,
yeah.
finance, this, that, whatever. Let's say you are a finance expert, right? And tomorrow Goldman Sachs wants to open an office in India, and the managing director of Goldman Sachs is visiting India, and they are saying, okay, I want to pick 5 industry experts who can tell me what is India all about, or one industry expert to tell me what India is all about. Like, who will that Goldman Sachs chairman be talking to? Not you, who has 8-9 years of experience or 6 years of experience.
Someone maybe a 25.
Yeah. And I'm not saying you can't be the sharpest banker or whatever, but it just the nature of the world is that if you have 6 years of experience, it won't be you, right? But I've sat in meetings with Javier Tebas talking about how to build India, right? Richard Scudamore, like the absolute legend of the football industry, talking about how to build Premier League in India, what the league's all about, and how can we do that, and like stuff like that. And I think if the fact that industry is not very mature and professional is also an opportunity for younger organizations like us to do something cool and
grow
make a
with it.
mark. Yeah, absolutely.
Have the most amount of impact, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people get into the sports industry just thinking that they'll make a whole lot of money right off the bat.
Yeah.
I think it's more about, building something,
Yeah.
creating something from the ground up, and then being able to build that.
Yeah.
Because I think that was your reason for doing it as well.
Yeah, but I think my thinking has evolved, to be honest. Like, I would always think in the beginning ki fuck the money, it is what it is, and follow your passion. And I think it's easy for me to say. And so I want to be clear, we are not super wealthy or anything. I don't have family wealth where I can just live off of that.
Right.
But It's just that I felt like my needs were taken care of, and
Always.
yeah.
I think
So
that
at least
privilege
that privilege
yeah.
is just tremendous, right? Like I will have a house to sleep in, and I'll have a car to drive, and I'll have food to eat, and
Yeah.
you know,
And that's, I think
and
that's,
yeah,
as long as that level is being met,
Yeah.
you almost
Yeah.
feel a responsibility to do more than just the
yeah,
conventional.
yeah. But then it's evolved to a point where I feel like, listen, I'm doing this, and I'm investing my time into this, and I feel like I should be fairly rewarded for my time.
Mhm.
And yes, I can take some hits and
Yep.
take some cuts and all of that, but I have to ensure that the people who are invested in my organization, the people who are working in my organization, myself included, should we all be able to make a killing out of it? Why not? You know, and you know, it's funny how we judge footballers for chasing money sometimes. Like some footballer goes to China to play, and they're like, "What the fuck? Like,
You
going to
got paid
China,
40
got
million
paid
and
more
yeah.
than going to China." But that's what we all do for every day in our lives.
Yeah.
Like I have people who work in a different city, and their spouses in a different city, and the parents are in a different city, and they're living miserably. But their job is a good job, and they have zero justification to make to themselves
Anything
or
other than
anyone in the family or in
except
the
money.
society
Yeah.
कि ये क्यों ठीक है, राइट? क्योंकि वो अच्छी जॉब है और ज़्यादा पे कर रही है और अच्छे करियर प्रॉस्पेक्ट्स हैं, राइट? सिंपल. सो आई एम डूइंग ऑल ऑफ दिस. But if some guy moves to
China to
PSG
play. Yeah.
and not you know, be playing in a more competitive kind of league or an environment, we just judge them. And the same for the sporting industry. Like there is an obligation for a sporting industry or a sporting company to do things for free. Like you won't mind if Airtel or Vodafone is charging money for your phone.
Yeah.
But अगर हम ट्रेनिंग के लिए 2,000 रुपये ले रहे हैं यार, आप स्पोर्ट्स के लिए पैसा ले रहे हो. Like why, dude? I'm going to charge, and if you want to pay for it, great. If not, then fine. I'm not forcing you to.
Yeah.
But that's how the mindset has to change in our this thing. And I would love professionals to feel that I can be in this industry and make a killing. you
Right.
know?
Because
Yeah.
that's the way that more people flow in and more
Absolutely.
capital flows in.
Because how can an industry or even a sector sustain just by pure passion of people, and to say that
Nothing-
आपको पैसे नहीं मिलेंगे, आप सिर्फ पैशन के लिए कर लो.
In a capitalist,
बिकॉज हो सकता है पैशन के लिए बहुत लोग कर लें, बट उनकी रियलिटीज अलाउ ना करें. मतलब दे हैव अ फकिंग फैमिली टू फीड, दे हैव टू लिव अ लाइफ, यू नो. एंड इट्स नॉट रॉन्ग टू बी एबल टू से दैट आई वांट मोर मनी इवन इफ आई हैव अ thing sorted in my life.
yeah, no, everyone, like, I think, and this is the conversation that we all have at some point, is that the amount of money you're paying to some people or you're being paid might not be important for just the money, but it's almost a stamp of your value
Yeah,
in that sense to the organization, to what you do.
Yeah, dude.
And
I
that
tell
has to
you,
be fair.
when I first moved from the US, I was 4 years away from becoming a partner, okay, at Deloitte, and 3.5. I was on track to becoming the youngest partner in Deloitte's history. Okay,
Deloitte New York, yeah.
I'm going to boast a little bit here, but I
No,
was
please
genuinely
do.
doing well.
Yeah.
And when I came back, I was desperate for a sports job, but कुछ मिल नहीं रहा था. So there was a guy, and 4 years from being a partner living in New York, I was making good money.
Living in a penthouse. And
No, not a penthouse, but I had a good two-bedroom apartment in Upper East Side and all of that. I was doing well, financially well for myself. I came back, I was looking for sports jobs. Of course, I was not expecting anything like ridiculous or anything. But, you know, a living wage, decent wage that can at least maintain a little bit reasonable lifestyle for me. And I wasn't finding anything. And after 4 or 5 months of haggling, I found a job which was for 20,000 rupees in Bombay.
20,000 rupees a month.
A month.
Or is that like a 99% pay cut?
It's like I don't know. Definitely much more than that. Definitely much more than 99%.
$300 a month.
Right. That was less than 1 day of expense in a Deloitte consultant's life, you know, unfortunately. Expense, I'm not even talking
Yeah,
about.
not salary. Like your lunch and your...
Yeah. But I took the job, like I accepted the offer because I wanted to be in sports that bad. But my dad told me that, listen, I'm like, you've left your job, you've come here, we are supporting you, you do whatever the hell you want to do. I'll support you through and through. But don't take this job because this will kill you, right? Because this is not what you're worth, you know. It's just so, and thankfully, like I listened to him and I let it go, and something really significantly better came my way, which was many X of this, and then a 99% cut.
So you started with the passion, but
Yeah. But I think the industry needs to evolve where bloody it's not just about passion. Like people should join the industry for the money, for the opportunities, for the career.
right, like
for
they
the
do
path.
for any other career
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the onus is on people like us to be able to build that
Be
out.
able to provide that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we are not able to. At the moment, we are not.
No, not
know-
at the same level as a banker or,
Yeah,
a,
yeah.
or a
Or
VC firm or
Forget banking and consulting because those are extraordinarily high paying jobs. But even like a corporate job, you know, we are not able to get anywhere close to being able to offer those kinds of careers to people.
Yeah, I agree. And also I think with young companies, it's also a very, like, it's a fight for survival almost every day, right?
Yeah.
And the daily struggle is like how to pay salaries and
Yeah, exactly.
how to meet expenses and how to then think of growth. So over a period of time where you're able to stabilize certain revenue sources where you know, okay, this is sorted, like this
Yeah.
I know my basics are being met, now it's just
Yeah.
about growth and expansion is when you can actually start providing that.
Yeah.
Initially it's just a lot of fight and struggle.
Absolutely. And there's a constant battle for companies like us that are so flexible to do anything. If you make a little bit of extra cash, then the question is, do you reinvest in something new,
Or do you
kind of just sit on it? Because we want to be a value creator. We don't see ourselves as इस साल का profit हो गया and सब खुश हो गए. And none of the investors, I mean, I'm sure everyone will love a profit, but I mean,
but they're more like
to take it away. But the vision of all the promoters and the investors is that let's keep growing and let's keep kind of creating more value.
So going off of that, you're someone who's raised external capital for your company, right? And I won't go too much into the specifics of how to raise and what not to raise.
Yeah.
But what is just two pieces of advice that you could give? One, while thinking of raising money, what you should keep in mind. And after you've raised any sum of money, what should you keep in mind? Just one each. For that.
See, I think when you're looking at raising, I think the most important thing is, in my opinion, what investors look at is the team and the people. Like I don't think there is an idea in India today, okay, that has in some way, shape or form not been executed somewhere else. If you look at all the big raises that have happened in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, all the tech now, ed tech and e-commerce and hotels, and I mean maybe Oyo was probably one, but the concept of aggregation, like all of those are ideas that have been
imported
in some way or a variation of what is existing. But the question is about the team, the people, and being able to implement the idea in India, which is the biggest challenge, right? I mean, Uber is a brilliant idea, but like only 2 people have been able to implement it properly, or even not even, I guess, right? But
it's about competition, right? Yeah.
So I think being true to who you are and what you stand for, and if you don't find an investor, you don't find an investor, and then you find somebody else. But if you're true to that, and and what you believe in, what you stand in, what your story is, I think that's the most important thing about raising funds today. And that completely it completely connects with your second question about after you raise and what. And I think after you raised, the biggest thing is communication.
Right.
And so after we raised the second round, the first year after we raised the second round, we had so there was an ongoing year, and then where we kind of more or less met our targets of what we had committed to the second round of investors. And the second year we had some aggressive plans, and then in that second year, both GST and demonetization really hit us hard, like really hard, and we were not able to get to anywhere close to what our targets were. And one of the learnings was that as somebody who was kind of fully responsible for the P&L, it was easy to hide,
Right.
you know. But I think just to be out there and to communicate and to be
Say
able to,
it is
because
what it
ultimately
is.
people are people, and people who are investing, of course, they want their returns, but they're also like just people. They understand businesses and they have a different appetite for risk, and you might be feeling a little like you might have a different understanding of their appetite of risk than their
Right.
own appetite of risk. So yeah, those are the things. But I think just to be true to who you are and have that genuine story and that what you want to do.
How many people said no to you when you went to them?
Over 500. Over 500. Seriously. Over
500.
Yeah.
How much time did it take to raise your first round? Matlab from
First round I was very lucky. Like I literally was the first person I met bought into my story.
damn,
But after that,
over 500 people have
yeah,
said no or come back
between
later.
me and some of my other colleagues, we would have met over 500 people. Because development, sports in itself, and then development in sports.
It's a risky business.
yeah.
At any point, it can like regulation can change.
Yeah,
Like I think abhi
yeah.
GST they applied 5% on sports, right? When the GST law was brought in.
18, man. I mean, on training, 18 different things on sports. So
Yeah.
like goods was more around 5%.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got hit really hard.
Right.
Because
Before that, there was no
there
tax.
was no service tax on sport training.
Interesting. So what is the? I'm gonna delve into something slightly different. I know you're big into spirituality, and
Yeah.
I know that's something that's very dear to you.
Yeah.
My question is, being a CEO, which is a very like, I wouldn't say cutthroat, but it is a ruthless role in some ways.
Yeah.
And then also being someone who is very spiritual. Do you see those two ideologies clash in
No.
your life, or are they like complementary?
No.
In some
I think
ways.
the biggest, this is my now, my mission in life from this year is to be able to bring spirituality to a common man. And this is the biggest fucking stupid challenge that the spiritual people have created. Not challenge. This is the biggest lie that the spiritual people have created, that they have tried to define and create a boundary around spirituality. Right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're not much into meditation or any form of meditation, whether it's even yoga or meditating
I'm not,
or even religious or any form, or like you don't believe in God or you don't believe in universe or you don't believe in good. Let's say you have nothing to do with any of this. But if I come to you and I say, I'm a friend of yours, and I say, listen, dude, I did this thing where for 20 minutes I heard this really cool music, right? And I did a little bit of breathing before that, and I heard this amazing track. And after that, I felt like I'm on mushrooms, right? For example, right? You're like, fuck, this is amazing. You might give it a shot, right? For 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes of investment of your life, right? But can you see anywhere around that in your life that somebody is offering you that 20 minutes? No. What is happening is Baba is saying, come to my ashram,
spend 12 days.
Spend few days. You have to wake up at 4:30. You have to sleep on hard floors. You have to fucking clean the place. You have to meditate for 6 hours. And you're like, what the hell? This is not me. I'm not going to be able to do that. So, and then there are lots of people who might be more spiritually inclined than you, right? Might find some kind of fun in just sitting still or just being in their own thoughts for 10 minutes, half an hour, or might just enjoy a long walk in the park alone without their phones or interruptions. Or basically, it's just about connecting to yourself. So, what has happened is that the whole concept of spirituality is your ability to connect with yourself, right? And in order to commercialize it, people have actually created boundaries around it. I don't need to meditate for 5 hours to be able to be called spiritual. And how spirituality has just gone away from a common man. This question, what you're asking, is a question that is the most common question, but to me is the saddest question. Because this question should not exist. Because spirituality should not be a
attained.
this or this.
Yeah.
Right? It should not be that I have to forego money, I have to forego career, I have to forego life, I have to forego sex, I have to forego
Anything.
flirting or or hooking up randomly to be able to be spiritual. Right? If my path agrees with it, then I don't need to be having
There's
a
no
problem with
set
it.
mold with it.
There is no, and that's what I hate about definitions. Is in general, like a lot of people ask me, how do you define spirituality? I'm like, dude, the minute you define something, you're creating boundaries around it, and there's no fucking boundaries around spirituality. And all these ashrams and babas and sadhus, even the good ones, I'm not saying the people who are the bad ones are just doing crazy shit.
Yeah.
But even the good ones who actually believe in their spiritual thought and their process, right? Even the ones who are not hoarding cash and money, even the ones who are not fucking the chicks, even the good ones, they are creating boundaries around their style, their thinking, their philosophy, and creating boundaries, external boundaries for people to experience that. And they say, अगर आपने जी 45 मिनट का एक meditation नहीं करी तो क्या meditation
It's
है?
like a paywall.
Dude, I
in
can do
essence.
meditation for 3 minutes and I can feel amazing, and that's what it is. Right? And my mission now is to be able to bring this to a common man. Like, you can experience spirituality by running this store, by drinking alcohol, by banging chicks, by doing whatever the fuck you want to do, and still be able to experience some of it.
Right.
Right? Then you'll have your own path, and you'll find out that there's something which you were doing which were not true to who you are. And then if you found that path, those things will naturally kind of fall in place. Right? If that was not who you are.
Right.
And that's where I feel like, not just in India, globally, like all these boundaries around religions and even spirituality. Like the whole concept of spirituality was like, I don't believe in a formalized religion, and I just believe in certain fundamentals, which is doing good, connecting with yourself, and being able to follow your life path based on what your heart says. If you create boundaries around that, then it's the same. It's like a religion then.
Right.
Spirituality is becoming a religion. And every Baba has their own form of spirituality and has their own.
So
people
it's
ask me,
almost like mini religions.
people ask me, आप Sadhguru को follow करते हो? मैंने कहा, there's no absolute yes or no to it. Like, I love some of the things he says. I don't like some of the things he says. I actually despise some of the things he says.
Yeah.
But I don't need to form a boundary around what my spirituality norms are. And they don't have to adhere 100% to some person.
Some other person's thought of what is right and wrong. You just have to be like at peace with them.
Absolutely.
And I think that doesn't just apply to spirituality. I think that applies to almost a lot of things in life where we place things into definitions and boxes.
Yeah.
And then we just try so hard to just adhere to them.
Yeah.
That we actually go away from the others in that sense.
But also there's not much difference in, like, just say we have lots of religious people in our country, right? And let's say if you are religious and I'm a-religious, let's say there are 20 religions out there. You're saying I'm Hindu, but you're saying no to 19 others.
Right.
I'm just saying no to 20 others. That's the only difference. I mean, it's not a huge difference. You think that something else is not for you. I also think something else is not for me.
But I think you think nothing is for you out of that.
But nothing, what is for me is something I have carved out, which is good, best of
everything that you want to be. Yeah.
And I just don't want to, conform to something in totality. But that's the challenge with spirituality. And I feel like some of the best people some of the best professionals in many of the professions are spiritual. Like you can look at them and you can tell that they are, and they don't need to, like this whole concept of tyag. Tyag doesn't necessarily need to be about money, right? It can be about so many other things, and it doesn't need to not necessarily exist for you to be spiritual.
Right. It's just definition that people have made.
Yeah.
Essentially. Okay, last question, Vivek, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
So in a way, two questions. But what is one piece of advice that you would give to 23-year-old Vivek Sethia? And what is one piece of advice you will give to a young professional starting out today?
I think the latter is much easier.
No, but we'll go with the
the thing with the former is that I have come to terms with the fact that all experiences are good experiences, right? genuinely, like all experiences are good experiences, and they might hurt you in certain way at the moment. And I'm not saying कि सब चीज़ अच्छे के लिए होती है. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that they are. You have to just take an experience as it is. Like imagine if you start yelling at me right now, or shouting at me, or abusing at me. At the end of the day, it's somebody speaking. That's really what it is, right? Now, how much I internalize your abuses and kind of get bothered by that is what changes my emotions, right? Eventually. So I actually genuinely, like, I might sound super cliched, but I genuinely have, like, I've really embraced all the goods and the bads, and like at 24 I was at Cornell, like I was in New York at 28, 29. I came back, like I've been so fucking blessed. It's not funny, right? And yes, there are things that I don't necessarily am not proud of, and I regret, and maybe regret is not the right word. I'm not definitely proud of, and things I could have done differently, but it's all in the stride. So I don't like, even though, like, I feel people make a big deal about careers and money. So I'll give you an example. Jaise, let's say you're a big billionaire, right? And you go for a holiday, right? And you went on a yacht for a party, okay? And you're successful in the conventional sense of success, right? So you had an experience, and that's an experience a lot of people crave for, right? Let's say I'm an average Joe. I saved up for a year. I went to Turkey while you were there, right? And the time you were having a party in the yacht, I was in a backpackers hostel and having the fucking best time with fellow backpackers. You will never experience this. Yes, in principle, I don't have money to experience what you can.
Right.
And you can experience this. But most people are not choosing to experience this still.
Right.
So my experience is still, that one evening, I had a phenomenal fucking experience. You had a phenomenal fucking experience. Yes, you spent a lot more money than that. But we both were in a city having a great experience. Right? And that's why I think people just overthink the rich experiences. I'm not saying I have nothing against wealth, and spirituality in principle has nothing against wealth. Let me just be very clear.
Wealth is good for whoever you create.
Imagine what you can do with wealth. It all depends on that, what you want to do with wealth, right? So there's nothing wrong with wealth, and I would love more money, and I genuinely believe that this misnomer of spirituality is against money is just bullshit, right? That's not how at least I define my spirituality. But what I'm saying is, it's just so much about experiences, and we tend to chase certain experiences, and we tend to kind of forego the ones which we are
right.
So if I'm in an auto, I'm having the best conversation with an auto driver, and somebody else is in a Merc driving somewhere else and maybe reading a newspaper. We both are having very different experiences. I'm not saying one is good or the other, but if you just keep thinking कि मैं Merc में होता उस time पे, तो that's where the problem is. So my genuine, like, as cliched as it might sound, my genuine advice to me is like, dude, you fucking lived an amazing, when you were 23, you were doing crazy shit. I mean, do that same, like, just be that. And to younger entrepreneurs, I will say, there is no dearth of good investors, good people to back you, the money that people will give you. You just need to genuinely stay true to who you are. I have molded some of my, I won't say principles, but I have molded some of my thinking based on just being able to kind of raise money or appease an investor or all of that. And I feel like that's not what one needs to do. And I trust me, I understand the pressure when you're in an entrepreneur, when you're in a startup situation, and you need to raise funds or you need to do things in order to, and sometimes it's a matter of survival. Like, some investors come to you and say कि मेरे को ये terms हैं, otherwise it's a no-go, and you have no other option, so you have to take a deal. And yes, you have to do things like those. But as much as you can stay true to who you are, I think that definitely almost always pays off in the long run. It's very difficult to take that call at that time, but
it's the hardest call.
But I feel it's one of those things you can't teach. Like, हर आदमी को यही लगेगा कि ये बेवकूफ है, अब बोल रहा है because you've gone through that, right? So anyone who hears this will say, it's easy to say now,
Right.
right? But when the pressure, in your case, like if you're fundraising right now and you have to kind of keep the business afloat and you have to agree to certain things,
Yeah,
and
you have
to
you
do
have to
that.
do things which are not 100% favorable.
Yeah.
But not everything in life will always be 100%
Yeah.
favorable. Like
Yeah.
you'll get some good wins and then you'll take some hits.
Yeah.
And that's just the way
Exactly.
of life. But great, thank you.
Cool, man.
Thank you so much, Vivek.
Thanks.
So
Thanks
guys,
for having
thank
me.
you for tuning in. I hope you got some great insights from Vivek. Vivek is a great friend and a mentor for me for the last few years now. So thank you for tuning in again. Just remember why we do it. We do it for the culture.